1.44 billion people today on this planet live in this country. Average holding size is only 1 hectare. These small holders are feeding the largest population on this planet and still being a net exporter of agriculture. Think about US, which has 3 times land than us, big farmers, highest tech, they are net importers. US is a big net importer of agriculture. China is a big net importer of agriculture. Africa is a net big importer of agriculture. India is the only country with so much population. After feeding, it is still a net exporter. Let me start by saying which is our biggest agricultural commodity. Our biggest agricultural commodity is milk. The value of milk is more than the value of rice plus wheat plus all the pulses together plus sugarcane. Milk is not under any MSP regime. And milk, the story of success in milk sector is remarkable. In 1951, we were producing 17 million tons of milk. US was at 53 million tons, 3 times more than us. Today, we are at 239 million tons of milk production and US is at 103 million tons. We are spending for the whole country for all the crops. ICRIER budget for agriculture R&D is less than 10,000 crores. One company called Bayer is spending $1.7 billion. One company is equivalent to this country. And when you are saying your poverty is just 5% left, extreme poverty, why are you giving to 800 million free food? Can't they afford their food? Everybody has to work to earn their food. So this is, I would say, 70% politics in this and only 25-30% reality. 5% poverty, you want to give to 10%, you want to give to 15%, I'm fine. You give free to 15% of population at the bottom. But at least the other one should at least pay half of the minimum support price that you are paying to the farmer. This is what Prime Minister Vajpayee had a formula. I can write, if food and fertilizer subsidies both are given directly to the beneficiaries, you are going to save at least 70,000-80,000 crores every year. And this is the biggest reform agenda that you can do. And today, given the digital economy and given that you can reach everyone through bank accounts and digitalization and space technologies you can use to identify each plot, both on fertilizer subsidy as well as food subsidy. If this government can do it, they will do the biggest reform in the country in the agri-food space. But Mumbai and Delhi may like to go to BMW, rural areas are still on two-wheelers. So from where the demand will come? The demand will come if their incomes go up. And that is where 46% of the workforce is engaged in agriculture even today. If their income has to go up by diversification towards high value crops, you can have on the farmers' fields solar panels. अन्नदाता को ऊर्जादाता बना दो, उसकी income double हो जाएगी. Why are you creating all these solar parks which are exclusive of the masses? The largest chunk of land is with the farmers. Why on the farmers' fields you can't create solar? So like the milk cooperatives, you can create solar cooperatives and their income will double in 6 months. So Indian agriculture, unlike the Chinese agriculture, unlike the Japanese agriculture, unlike the OECD agriculture, Indian farmer is net taxed despite all the subsidies you are giving. So this should be kept in mind.
Welcome to the Growing India podcast. I am Monika Halan. I will lead conversations with thought leaders in the space of economics, policy, and geopolitics. I'm hoping to convert the big events which happen around us to our everyday lives. This is an initiative with Grow and me to decode some of India's most pressing issues. Today, we are very lucky to have the very distinguished economist, Dr. Ashok Gulati with us. Dr. Gulati is a renowned Indian agricultural economist. He is currently Distinguished Professor at the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations, or ICRIER. He was Chair of the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices and the director at the International Food Policy Research Institute. Dr. Gulati has held many other key roles, including membership on the Central Board of Directors of the RBI, NABARD, and NCDEX. He was the youngest member of the Economic Advisory Council to Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Honored with the Padma Shree in 2015, he has authored 20 books and numerous academic papers. He is the go-to person for wisdom on agriculture for policymakers, governments, and academia. Thank you so much, Dr. Gulati, for sparing time. I'm going to actually start off by asking you something that when we think of agriculture, especially in India, there is this Mother India kind of feeling in your heart that poor farmer, he's hungry, he's unclothed. My kitchen is showing a very different farming initiative in terms of the produce that I'm getting grown here. It's not imported, it's all grown here. Tell me, like, what is happening in agriculture? Is it a good story? Is it a bad story? What is happening?
Well, to say that it's a good story, or largely a pretty good story, but there are segments in which there are serious concerns that we must address. What is the good story about? 1.44 billion people today on this planet live in this country. Average holding size is only 1 hectare. And we are feeding, these smallholders are feeding the largest population on this planet and still being a net exporter of agriculture. Think about US, which has 3 times the land than us, big farmers, highest tech, they are net importers. US is a big net importer of agriculture. China is a big net importer of agriculture. Africa is a net big importer of agriculture. India is the only country with so much population. After feeding, it is still a net exporter. We are the largest exporter of rice in the world. Out of 61 million tons of global trade of rice, 20 million is exported by India alone. So today, in a way, we are contributing to global food security. And this is when we already are giving to more than 800 million people almost free wheat and rice, 5 kg per person per month. So it's a remarkable story how it was done. By the infusion of technology, by the infusion of innovative products on fertilizer side, on irrigation side, on whatever price incentives were given, and so on and so forth. But there are concerns, and the concerns are water table is going down, soils are getting damaged, air quality is deteriorating, biodiversity is losing. So, in the race to feed people and to make sure that Indian peasants continue in this profession, we have neglected the planetary concerns. The Mother Earth, so called, is suffering. And that is because of some wrong policies, some wrong practices, some wrong products that we are using and that we need to correct. It has to be peasant positive, it has to be planet positive, and in the overall scheme of things, people must benefit from this. And I think today there is no shortage of food. When I was a young person, I know that I had to stand in the queue for 2 hours, 3 hours to get 2 liters of milk. And how India was called ship to mouth economy when 10 million tons of PL 480 imports were coming in 1960. So I feel very heartened that India has succeeded in ensuring its food security, so called availability of food. Even access to food is reasonably good. But nutritional security is still on the table, and for the next 10 years, 15 years, we have to focus on that because children below the age of 5, almost 35% of them are stunted. And one of those reasons is not nutritional food. So there are challenges, as I said, but 2/3 of the story is a success story, and the world has to learn from India on that.
That's really heartening to hear. And I completely resonate. I think we all grew up in the India where we've all lined up for milk, water. In the summers, a lot of things would go off, like khoya and milk. There used to be shortages. And this, like I began with saying, the abundance right now is something that at least our generation could not have imagined. Like when we grew up in the 70s, we couldn't have imagined the Bharat of today. So you are saying that it's a success story and it's very heartening. I know that when India does rice export controls, the global price of rice goes up. So we are doing something which is hugely impactful in the world. So very briefly on what did we get right? What is not, what has gone wrong? And also, I think reform is contextual to the time. So when we were hungry and poor, it was about just grain. I think that story has changed because again, World Bank numbers are out. Extreme poverty, according to the World Bank, is down to 5 point something. Other measures are putting it down to 3. It's a low single digit number. Let's just agree on that. How do we shift this policy stance from basic food to what you're saying, nutrition?
It's very interesting as poverty comes down, that means the average level of income is going up. And then you graduate from cereal based diets to more nutritious diets automatically. You don't go from 4 chapatis to 6 chapatis or 8 chapatis. You go from 4 to 2, and a person like me, only 1 chapati is fine. So, what adds on your thali is more of milk, curd, fruits, vegetables, meat, eggs, and so on and so forth. They are much more nutritious. Therefore, the demand for those particular products is increasing much faster than the demand for cereals. Can you imagine what is the fastest growing segment of agriculture in the last, let's say, 10 years? It is fishery, 8.2% per annum. It's much faster than what the cereals are growing at 2 to 3% per annum. Fruits, vegetables, milk, they are all growing at about 5% per annum. Overall agriculture GDP is growing at about 4% per annum. So 4%, but fishery is growing at 8%. Now that's where nutrition comes, but at present we are exporting. Can you imagine what is the biggest agriculture export of India to US? It is shrimps. And such a delicate thing in which phytosanitary standards have to be kept, and they are keeping it. And much of it is going all the way from Andhra Pradesh. So this thing, rice is our number one export item, about $12 billion. Next, second biggest export item is marine products, led by shrimps. So we have to look at different components of agriculture where the demand is growing faster, but still there are poor people. India is so diverse and so large that there are people where household income still is like 15,000 rupees a month. You go to Bihar, Jharkhand, parts of eastern India, this is the level of income. Now with that, they will eat a lot of rice. In fact, many of the families I have visited, they take 3 times rice. It's all carbs. But if you can put fish in that, or you can put dal in that, and so on and so forth, and this happens, there is a distortion in our cropping pattern. Rice we are producing abundantly, and one of the reasons behind that is many states are giving free power and highly subsidized fertilizer by the center. And rice consumes a lot of fertilizer and water. And that is the reason why in Punjab, Haryana belt, the water table is going down and creating all sorts of gas emissions. So we need to correct that balance, this because of these policies which were right perhaps when we were short of grains, but that has led to a skewed production basket in favor of cereals, and then we are importing pulses and oilseeds which are nitrogen fixing. So if you want to really become independent, literally self-sufficient in pulses especially, it's a one-stroke thing that give the same incentives as you are giving to rice, to pulse production, and you will be within 2, 3, 5 years, you will be totally self-sufficient, self-reliant in that. I mean, there are concerns and there is need to correct the incentive structure because we are spending a lot of money on agriculture. A lot of subsidies are going, a lot of expenditure is going, but we are not spending in the right manner. The same 1,000 crores that we are spending can give you much more than what it is giving today because the nature of those policies is not uh, in line with the demands of the time.
Right, right. So, what you've just said is bringing the tension between the subsidies to the agriculture sector, and one of that is the minimum support price. So, I want you to spend just 2 minutes explaining to somebody who may have seen a 30-second reel but doesn't really understand MSP, and also then lead on to saying that this has been a cause of tension between India and the US much before even President Trump 1.0, where they are saying that these are trade distorting subsidies. So, just the role of MSP when it started, and then you're telling me that shrimp, which is not under MSP, due to market forces, is now number 2 in export to the US. Okay, so we are battling.
To the US is the number one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So rather than expanding on the MSP, is it not a better idea that we use market forces to encourage what we want to do? So I understand that dismantling the MSP is a political problem. So basically, I want you to explain this MSP and the problems of dismantling it, because we are seeing that market forces are working in something like shrimp. Why are they not working in dals?
Let me start by saying which is our biggest agricultural commodity. Our biggest agricultural commodity is milk. The value of milk is more than the value of rice plus wheat plus all the pulses together plus sugarcane. Okay? Milk is not under any MSP regime. And milk, the story of success in milk sector is remarkable. In 1951, we were producing 17 million tons of milk, 17. US was at 53 million tons, 3 times more than us. Today, we are at 239 million tons of milk production and US is at 103 million tons. We are way more than double of US. And it is all done by the smallholders where the average herd size is just 4. So smallholders can do wonders provided you create institutions that are supportive of smallholders. Milk cooperatives were created. Gujarat Amul is a wonder of the wonders. It's a smallholder-led story, right? And we have created and we are shown to the world that what smallholders can do, provided they can come together, they can pour the milk there. The only Prime Minister, Lal Bahadur Shastri, who spent a night in the village looking at the experiment that was going on in Kheda district. And he talked to the farmers till 2 o'clock at night. And in the morning when he saw ladies coming up and pouring in 2 liters of milk and 4 liters of milk, he saw this as a melting pot of the society. Different castes are coming together. And he approved immediately, the NDDB, the National Dairy Development Board, was created out of that. And Kurian was made the chairman. And he took it forward. Of course, then there were World Bank loans and Operation Flood 1, Operation Flood 2, and so on and so forth. How the scaling up took place. Still, what had happened? Cooperatives are processing only 10% of the milk through the formal sector. Another 10% is being processed by the private sector. Only 20% of India's milk production passes through the formal sector. Rest is in the informal sector or self-consumption. I think there is a long road for investments in this and a remarkable story. Now, that the question that you asked was MSP business. MSP was created for wheat and rice in mid 1960s, when 1965 to be exact, when the Agriculture Prices Commission and Food Corporation of India were brought into existence. I didn't know. I did my PhD on MSP business And then I didn't know one day I'll end up as the chairman of the Prices Commission there. So I have read it all through as part of my career. That was a time when we were literally living ship to mouth, and 10 million tons of wheat was being imported under PL 480. And that was the time when the new technology was brought in from Mexico. 18,000 tons of high yielding variety seeds, the biggest ever shipment by any country at that time, was brought in, and that led to an increase in production. The fear was when the production will increase, suddenly the prices will collapse. That's the time Food Corporation of India was given the task that prices should not dip. This is the minimum support price we are saying, and Food Corporation of India should buy anything that farmers are ready to sell. In Punjab, you would wonder at that time the schools had to be closed. There was such a burst of grain that Food Corporation of India was procuring, but they didn't know where to keep it because there were no godowns. So the schools, primary schools were closed, and the first godowns in Punjab were the primary schools. Those classrooms became the godowns. A country that was living from ship to mouth in 1965 and 66, by 71, 72, when we had a war on 71 with Pakistan, you remember 7th Fleet was coming and the US was trying to turn off the tap on PL 480, and Mrs. Gandhi said, "Thank you very much, we don't need your PL 480 anymore." It took just 6 years for India to turn around from a hugely deficit to a self-sufficient nation in basic staples. It was the role of technology, it was the role of fertilizers and irrigation, and it was the role of minimum support prices. But we are not in that situation today. Today we are the largest exporter of rice, as I said. And even after giving free food, the Food Corporation of India's godowns are 3 times more than the buffer stocking norm for rice. So if the policies don't change, कहते हैं ना गंगा बहेगी नहीं तो स्टिंक करेगी. So the policies have to change with times. If they don't change, they will inflict heavy burden on the society. So the minimum support price has served its purpose, it has lived its age, and today we need to change. And we need to change to different market oriented, market aligned options, futures, contract farming. I mean, the type of milk, it's not the government who decides, but farmers and the processors come together and decide the price of milk. Fishery price is not decided by the government. Fruits and vegetables. And these are, markets are not perfect. So is the MSP, it's not perfect. MSP has a huge cost on the government. This skewed distribution of wheat rice at present is a cost to the society we are paying. But if you have fruits, vegetables, and all these high growth sectors, more nutritious food, all their prices are decided by different mechanisms. And we need to invest more in getting those agriculture markets right and gradually get away from this so-called minimum support price, which was right in 1960s and 70s, but not more. The whole world has shifted from price support interventions and price subsidy interventions to income transfers, because that is less distorting to the markets. And that is where the dispute in the WTO and others is. Either you invest more in R&D, research and development, or if you want to give as income transfers, which don't distort the markets as much as the price subsidies do.
Right. Right. So a lot of now issues then come up because I'll tell you what I understood of the farm laws. There were 3 farm laws which got revoked. Farmers could sell outside of the government mandis. They could enter into contract farming with protections on their land. Nobody could take their land away. This is hard coded into the law. And removal of the some of the agri commodities from the Essential Commodities Act, which is a ancient thing which has served its purpose, but its presence prevents the creation of better warehousing and cold storages. All of us know what happened. And My understanding is that a lot of farmers were actually in favor of these, but there was a small vocal minority which became extremely political. Agriculture becomes a very emotive issue, and it's very difficult to talk markets because then you're called a market fundamentalist. How do we change stance? Because this has been tried. And this, according to me, would have been a 1991 moment for agriculture. Had we done this, what would have happened to agriculture through this reform was what happened to industry in 1991. I mean, we've seen the fruits. We're all living on that fruits of that one major reform push. How do we move from here? Because it's a stalemate, it's about emotions. You try saying something about rich farmers and you see the kind of trolling which comes on social media immediately. How do we change stance? Because this is over. And I will talk about futures, options, insurances. That's a key part of my conversation ahead. But how do we change now? The politician has burnt his fingers on this. किसकी हिम्मत है आगे अब करने की?
Let's first try to get the facts right. Not more than 10% of farmers sell to government on minimum support price of their produce. And not more than 10% of agriculture produce is sold on MSP. Okay. So this MSP game is only for 10% of farmers and 10% of agriculture produce. 90% of agriculture produce and 90% of farmers are selling outside this MSP business. Even for wheat and rice, wheat, just 4 states, Punjab, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, and then you start counting, okay, in Rajasthan a little bit and 1 million ton in UP, that's all. And rice, 5 states. This is where this whole thing is. For pulses, oil seeds, cotton, other things, very little intervention by the government. Okay. Yes, it could have been a major liberalization of the agriculture sector, the way industry liberalization took place in 91. In fact, and that's the op-ed I wrote at that time, that it was perhaps a 1991 moment. But thinking that just liberating markets can be a panacea for agriculture of all the things, no, there is a lot more to be done. I think our public resources that are going into agriculture, literally 80% of them is going in the form of subsidies, and only 20% as in the form of investments. Agriculture R&D is critical. We are spending for the whole country for all the crops. ICRIER budget for agriculture R&D is less than 10,000 crores. One company called Bayer is spending $1.7 billion. One company is equivalent to this country. Ultimately, you have to raise productivity, and that will come through research and development. So, but we will spend almost 2 lakh crores on fertilizer subsidy, or 2 lakh crores, another one on food subsidy, free food. So I think India, of the total 5 lakh crores that goes into food and fertilizer and agriculture food space, 4 lakh crore goes in pure subsidies. And that is a major challenge. How do we turn it around? Because there are massive leakages. When you give free things or highly subsidized things, there is misuse, there is diversion, there are leakages in the system, and we can talk about that, whether fertilizer or food. To me, the ultimate solution in both is giving direct benefit transfer to the beneficiaries that you have identified. And when you are saying your poverty is just 5% left, extreme poverty, why are you giving to 800 million free food? Can't they afford their food? Everybody has to work to earn their food. So this is, I would say, 70% politics in this and only 25-30% reality. 5% poverty, you want to give to 10%, you want to give to 15%, I'm fine. You give free to 15% of population at the bottom. But at least the other one should at least pay half of the minimum support price that you are paying to the farmer. This is what Prime Minister Vajpayee had a formula. He said Antodaya will get free, BPL people below poverty line, they will have to pay half the minimum support price, and those who are above the poverty line will have to pay 90% of the minimum support price. I think we need to bring that, so that will save you a lot of money. And that you need to put in agriculture R&D, into irrigation, into new innovations, and you should incentivize the farmers to also protect the planet's concerns, save water, save soil, save greenhouse gas emissions, save biodiversity, and you should reward them for that, because that's what you have damaged in this race to feed a large population.
Why is a switch to an income transfer? So we've all seen the benefits of income transfer through the Jan Dhan, mobile, Aadhaar network. The government was able to push money right into the bank accounts during COVID, and we've seen the success, the lack of leakages and all that. Why are we not being able to do this in agriculture? How do you, okay, so given the politics, as a policymaker, if you were going to implement this, look, if we were China, this is a one pen, one stroke. No one's going to protest. We're a democracy. How do you do this in a democracy?
How did we do it? There, first, let's try to understand when you want to give some subsidy. If you are giving through price subsidization, very cheap, gas cylinder, 500 rupees. Okay, you will get only this much. This is your quantity quota. If you want more, then you have to pay the market price. Right? This is one way. Quantity rationing. Even in ration shops of the 60s and 70s, you will get a limited quota. The other is you directly give the money to those people whom you feel they need to be supported, and let them go in the market and buy at market prices. So there are no distortion, no leakages, or very minimal here. Some people say, oh, if you give the money to them, they will use in liquor and this and that. UNDP has done some studies, 3-4% leakage. Versus at present, even in food subsidy, we have worked it out with the latest data, 22-23, the consumption data that came. Central government, what it says they have given through public distribution system, and what the beneficiaries say how much they have taken from the PDS, there is a 22% gap. Where is that going? If you include state schemes also, the gap increases to 28%. There is a leakage. Same thing is in fertilizers. Fertilizers, urea is so cheap, it's being diverted to plywood industry, glass industry, even going to neighboring countries. There is a diversion. If you look at the input-output table, again 22% of fertilizers don't reach agriculture. And this is 2 lakh crores. So even if you save 20%, that's 40,000 crores every year saving. This is the biggest leakage. I can write, if food and fertilizer subsidies both are given directly to the beneficiaries, you are going to save at least 70,000-80,000 crores every year. And this is the biggest reform agenda that you can do. And today, given the digital economy, and given that you can reach everyone through bank accounts and digitalization and space technologies you can use to identify each plot, both on fertilizer subsidy as well as food subsidy. If this government can do it, they will do the biggest reform in the country in the agri-food space.
Why are they not doing it?
Why they are not doing it? There are certain operational problems, and that's where political economy starts coming in. I'd been closely interacting on those issues. PM Kisan, actually 2019, that came as a income transfer, was part of that, but our recommendation was you bring all the subsidies together. China does not give price subsidies, it gives literally income transfer as aggregate input subsidy support. The challenge comes, how do we identify the tenant farmers? Who are the tenants in the country? You go to agriculture ministry, they say, we don't know who are our farmers. No, that's your client. Today you have space technology. Google is tracking your moving car. Why can't you track each plot? They are stationary. And look at the land records, look at the Kisan credit cards, look at the fertilizer sales data. look at the soil health cards, triangulate all this data set to identify and open a portal that who are the tenants who are working on plot number this and that. Each plot can be identified as we have identified each human being as Aadhaar number. So this massive thing needs to be done. It will not take only 6 months, 8 months if the Prime Minister takes a lead that he has to do it. Initially they started off and then they
Tell us
started
what is
cleaning.
PM Kisan? Somebody might not know in the
Yeah,
audience.
PM Kisan is a scheme in 2019. This government started that 6,000 rupees per family of agriculture household will be given. Now, initially, this is always combined with some political economy that the election time and all these things start coming. So it came in 2019. And at that time, about 65,000 crores. Even this year, they have budgeted 63,000 crores for PM Kisan. Now, 6,000 rupees is not a big sum for a big farmer in Punjab, so they don't give a damn to it. But look at in Bihar, Jharkhand, where the average holding size is half a hectare. So this adds to there. But if you include in this the fertilizer subsidy, which is 2 lakh crores, then you can really do a change. Okay. So the question is, at present it is being given to those who have land records. But who are the tenants? And we don't know how many tenants are there. Government figures say 17%. There was lately a study done and that said, and Niti is working on that, about 35 to 40% is the tenancy in the country. So, and they don't have proper tenancy records because it's not a legal, it's a oral tenancy what they call. So that's where the operational problems come, but it can be solved provided you have to give a priority, and the priority has to come from the highest level. Prime Minister has to lead this. On the food subsidy front, the problem comes not from the consumer side. First you have to decide, do you want to give to 60% population or you want to give to 10% of population or 20% or 30% and what to charge. But this will correct. Why are you giving them just wheat and rice? They want to consume eggs, milk, so you can give them food coupons that these are the 20 commodities that you can consume. So it's your electronic wallet and it can be put every second month or third month this much money in your pocket and you can go at least 10%, 15% of the fair price shops can be converted into nutritional hubs because nutritional security you need to challenge. When you do pure income transfer and they can go anywhere and buy, the opposition comes from fair price shops. Fair price shops, 5,50,000 in this country. They say what we will do because we have been living on this wheat and rice and partly on the diversion of that. That's how the entire thing works. Like in the farm laws, there were commission agents at the back of it. So similarly, there is a lobby here of fair price shop owners. So you have to win over that. Any policy that has stayed for long, there would be vested interests created because they are benefiting from that system. Now, when you take away those benefits from them, they will go on the rooftop and start shouting, oh, we are losers, we are losers. If they are genuine losers, you can give them some compensation. You can plan something for them. Fair price shops, what they need to do, you can convert them into multi-commodity stores, nutrition hubs, but you need to take a political lead to do this. This is a 4 lakh crore job every year, food and fertilizer subsidy, and minimum 25% you can save if you take it on high priority and put in all the effort. Technically and operationally it can all be settled. Give me 6 months and a team of 5, 7 people. I'll show it how it can be done.
Is there political will right now to do this?
This is our political, they are going more into events, big communication, and certain big things, chips of the highest order, they are more attractive because we want to show the world we are in the advanced technologies. But if you have your feet of clay, the elephant cannot run very far off. So you need to strengthen your rural base because that is where the incomes need to increase, and they will demand the manufacturing goods. That will spur your industrial revolution. Otherwise, what happens? You and me, how many cars you can buy? India's growth story is demand coming from top 15%, HUD 20% of people. 80% of the people in the rural areas or lower levels of income, they are not in dire poverty, but they are not rich enough to demand all these industrial products. So you need to work and lift the income levels of those. And for that, you need to invest in rural areas and not give too much of subsidies. And subsidies, give it in direct transfer so that all the diversion you can save and put that back in the rural areas.
And this is leading me to the point of which exactly what you're saying, that we have 46% of the workforce, and that's accounting for 18% of the GDP. And there is, so is it love of the land? Is it lack of urban jobs? Is it lack of manufacturing? So what is this tension between these numbers? Why are we at this point?
It's important. And the wonder that we have seen the last 50 years is China, which reduced its poverty the fastest. They halved their poverty in 6 years, 78 to 84. Their reform started in 78, and they started off with agriculture. They did not start with. When the real incomes of farmers went up by 14% per annum, real incomes, they started demanding goods which were being produced by town and village enterprises. The whole manufacturing revolution of China started with TVEs, town and village enterprises, which are like small scale our micro and medium enterprises, small enterprises. And they could not cope up with the demand that was coming from the rural areas. Because when you were on the bicycle, your only dream is a two-wheeler. When you are on the two-wheeler, you want to get to a Maruti four-wheeler. But Mumbai and Delhi may like to go to BMW, rural areas are still on two-wheelers. So from where the demand will come? The demand will come if their incomes go up. And that is where 46% of the workforce is engaged in agriculture even today. If their income has to go up by diversification towards high value crops, you can have on the farmers' fields solar panels. अन्नदाता को ऊर्जादाता बना दो, उसकी income double हो जाएगी. Why are you creating all these solar parks which are exclusive of the masses? The largest chunk of land is with the farmers. Why on the farmers' fields you can't create solar? So like the milk cooperatives, you can create solar cooperatives and their income will double in 6 months.
We want to see you as the agri minister. Dr. Gulati, I want to now come to an area which my audience, which is largely urban middle class, worries about. So there's a small proportion of income tax paying Indian. So everyone pays the indirect tax, but direct tax paying Indian is a small number, right? So they question the tax-free nature of a farmer who may have similar income, the middle and the rich farmer, as to why they enjoy being tax-free. And there is a 2017 NIPFP paper where the author has calculated the tax foregone for financial year 16, and that was 85,000 crore. If he took the existing tax slabs and then did the calculation, and I extrapolated those numbers for FY25, and I get to a number of 2 trillion of tax foregone. Again, I come back to the same thing. It's an emotive issue. अन्नदाता को tax कर रहे हो. But as a software engineer, I might be doing something very important for the country as well. As a scientist, as we're all participating in the economy. So what is the special status, and is there any chance that this would change?
Well, and there are two parts of this. One, we need to understand the income. Let me make my position very clear on this. Income from any source, if it is high, it has to be reasonably taxed. and society has to decide what should be the. I'm always for lower rates of taxation and wider base. That is always good. In agriculture, the problem is what is your cost and what is your revenue? How do you estimate that? And that's a difficult situation. Now, in the cost, there are so many subsidies that the government is giving. The government says we give so much subsidy, farmer says we did not get it fully, we got partially, and other things, and so on and so forth. But there is a methodology to look at what is the support being provided to farmers. OECD has something called producer support estimates, and they estimate these things for more than 50 countries every year. They monitor. There are two parts of that. One is the input side story, that is fertilizer cost, how much subsidy is going there, power, free power, credit, interest subvention on that, crop insurance, and so on and so forth. The other is what is happening to output prices. Most of the developed countries give output prices which are higher than if there was a free trade across the board. So they have devised mechanisms through protecting their farmers. When you net out the two, the input side story and the output side story, when you net out the two, that is what you get, producer support estimates. For the OECD countries as a whole, the producer support estimate is about 14% of the farm produce. That means whatever is the value of their farm produce, 14% of that is a subsidy or support either through output prices, largely through output prices, and maybe something on the input prices. China, which used to be almost zero, is again almost crossing the OECD countries, developed countries. So China is also protecting its farmers today to the tune of 14 to 15%. Interestingly, India's producer support estimate is negative, minus 14%. What does that mean? You give subsidies on inputs, fertilizer, free power, this and that, but at the drop of a hat, you put export bans. You say private sector cannot hold stocks. You say this cannot go from here to there. So there are Essential Commodities Act, which is a draconian 1939 Defense of India rules, then 1955. That should have been thrown out of the window decades back. And then on top of that, what are we doing? To control prices, FCI dumps. Its cost of rice is 42 rupees a kg today. FCI, when it procures, stores, and distributes. They are selling in the market at 29 rupees a kg. This is dumping in its own country to suppress the prices. So what are you doing? If it was some other country, then we would have put anti-dumping duty on them. But when your own Food Corporation of India is doing it, you are implicitly taxing the farmers. You want to help the consumers, so there is a huge consumer bias in the policy making. Onion prices go up, immediately put a ban, and then you forget. When the prices come down 2 rupees, 4 rupees a kg, and the farmers are on the streets, then you wake up. So this export controls, stocking limits, movement restrictions, private sector cannot hold more than this stock, futures are suspended. These are all meant for 1960s, and we are following them today.
Why?
Because it's a consumer bias. They want to make you and me happy. Why are you protecting me when I can buy my car of 30 lakhs? And you want a onion price 50 रुपए हो गया तो शोर पड़ गया. It is farmers' income. Let the market decide that. So this is where implicit taxation of farming comes. So Indian agriculture, unlike the Chinese agriculture, unlike the Japanese agriculture, unlike the OECD agriculture, Indian farmer is net taxed despite all the subsidies you are giving. So this should be kept in mind. But on the whole, if there are some big farmers, WTO definition says all those who have less than 10 hectares of land are small farmers. You know what is the Land Ceiling Act in India? If it is irrigated land, you cannot have more than 7.5 hectare. So all India is small farmers. By our definition, those who are above 10 hectares are 2.5% of those farmers. Yes, their income would be there, but there are many of the urbanites. I know personally many of the persons I don't want to name in very good professions, whether doctors, engineers, others, they will buy 1 acre of land and show all the income is coming from there. So all their cash income is converted into white through showing them agriculture income. So this calculation, this loophole needs to be plugged. So anyone having more than specified income, net income, who are showing as agriculture income need to be taxed. There is no doubt about that.
Is that a political problem?
Because immediately many opposition parties, oh, now they are coming heavily on the Annadata. It's not a question of Annadata, it is urbanites who are showing as agriculture income with 1 hectare, they are earning 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs, just to convert their cash income, black income into white money.
But there's no way out then, because if you're afraid of, and also in
You have the guts.
very
These are hard reforms that are needed, like food subsidy. So you have to take on the vested interests. Fertilizer subsidy, you have to take on the vested interests.
but fingers have been burnt very badly in the previous round.
You know, there are two ways. One, when you are driven to the wall and you have to reform. 1991 reform was not by choice of the so-called Congress party at that time. It was driven to the wall, there was no option. You had kept your gold girvi rakha ho chuka tha, and you were in the same situation as Pakistan is today, $1.4 billion. So you had to reform. So one is that. The wisdom lies that you look forward 10 years ahead, 5 years ahead, 20 years ahead. What are the things that I need to change so that I can emerge as a superpower? You cannot become a superpower with all these subsidies, which are the effectiveness of that is way below than what the same investment can do.
I want to move to something which again might press some buttons. We've seen between 10 to 20,000 farmer suicides a year. The story is same from Mother India to now, farmer suicide, poor farmer. It's a mixture of debt, like you're saying, the market prices are not free because the government controls them in a certain way. Why are we not using modern financial products? For example, things like crop insurance. And now I understand that by the time the inspector goes to see, it's too late. But now they're using drone technology. Some, I think, agri-tech companies are coming up. So why are we not using insurance in the manner it should be used so that we don't have these cases of farmer suicides?
Well, let me say any suicide in the country is very unfortunate. There is something wrong in the system, whether it is the farmers, whether it is the students, whether it is the housewives, marriage goes, or whether it's the youngsters getting intimate with each other and then breaking it up and then committing suicides. But if you have to rationally look at the magnitude of this, you have to divide it by the number of farmers. And when you do that, look at the student suicides, for example, the pressure of studies, and divided by the number of students, then you don't see it as an abnormal situation. Okay? In the society, there are problems, economic problems, there are social problems, and they need to be addressed. So any suicide is a sad affair. Having said that, when the suicides occur in agriculture, of course, there is a lot of social element into it, but let me strictly look at the economic part of it. Economic part is it's heavily dependent on nature. Our irrigation is to maximum 50%, around 50% of the land. Rest is all on the rainfall. If rainfall skips or goes down, there is a drought here. Farmer has waited for 4 months for one crop because he can get maximum 2 cycles if he has irrigation. If he doesn't have irrigation, there is only one crop that he can have. And if that goes waste, nothing comes out of it because of the drought situation, then whatever loans he has taken for his working capital, fertilizer, seeds, whatever else he is using, he is driven to the wall. And that is where he takes, when there is a pressure of recovery, and tenants don't have access to institutional credit. So they are borrowing at 18%, 20%, 25%. In fact, the standard rate is 2 rupees सैकड़ा, 3 rupees सैकड़ा per month. That is 24% to 36% per annum. Can you survive at borrowing at 24% or 36% for your business? This is the vulnerable section, and they are borrowing at 24 to 36%. All the microfinance institutions are 18% to 25%. Risk factor is high. Now, how do you reduce risk? That is where PM Fasal Bima Yojana, and I was closely involved in that. In fact, I had given a presentation to the finance minister on this question when there was successive 2 years of drought, 15, 16. When Modi ji came, 14, 15, 15, 16, 2 years of successive droughts, which was only 3 times in a century. I said this, because of the weather change, climate change, the intensity and frequency of droughts may increase. And even when it rains, many a times it pours so heavily, it leads to floods. So you have to find a system. And that's how all these things came up, PM Fasal Bima Yojana. Unfortunately, in fact, I was propagating that you totally look at the mechanized system. What is that mechanized system? Each plot can be identified and you can track each plot. I talked to ISRO at that time and they said, our satellite comes after 23 days on the same plot. I said, that will not work. So you need to have what we call the LEOs, low Earth orbits. And firms in California, Planet Labs, is doing it. So you can get that and continuously monitor each plot. Then you have to have all weather stations all over the country. I had done the budgeting of it, gave it to the government at that time, that you can have every 15 minutes they will tell you how much is the heat, how much is the, so, and then you develop algorithms, how much is the damage if the heat goes up, if the rain is more than this. There were issues, if we put it, people will damage these and they will tinker with it. You put it on the rooftop of the, district magistrate. If still they can do it, then God bless this country, what is going to happen? So we relied on Patwari system for assessment of the damage. And Patwari system, with all the due respect, is highly corrupt system. So the reinsurers, the success of an insurance PM Fasal Bima Yojana is not on the insurance company, it is the reinsurers who take the ultimate risk. They don't have trust in your system. They know it is being manipulated. And politicians and all these patwaris join hands along with farmers to show, our damage was this much. That's not how insurance can be done. So you have to minimize the human intervention, maximize the system and modernize it with today's machinery, and it can be done. Government is giving huge subsidy on premium, almost 25,000 crores every year, 50-50. Farmer is paying 10 to 15% premium. So I think it's a very good scheme. Government needs to fix it properly, and if they can do it, they can reduce the
price volatility.
And then all these suicides can reduce. But a part of the suicide is the social factors and other things in the rural areas.
Of course.
Yeah.
Are there any success stories in terms of the use of insurance by either a state or a particular, is there anywhere where they have used these products with success?
Well, I would say, there were states which were not ready to accept. Punjab was one. हम तो नहीं adopt करेंगे. Then West Bengal or politically, because it is by the Prime Minister, so they don't. But certain states have done reasonably better than others, but there are not very great success stories. There are states which have got, like Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and all those, they have got good compensation whenever the need has arisen. But I still hear how the system is being manipulated in certain states. And that's where reinsurers tell us, Ashok, your system is not foolproof and therefore the premium rates remain high. Otherwise, if the scale increases, the premiums have to come down. China has done it, and they have done it well, and it's a small older economy. So we should be using all these digital technologies to do that, along with the space technologies, which can monitor the plots. I think that's the next phase of our digitalization of agriculture.
So if they, again, I want to move to the price protection part. And a lot of the audience has dabbled with futures and options on the stock market and day trading. Now, futures economics 101, finance 101 was protection of price in the future, right? So orange juice futures, whatever futures, wheat futures.
Future is in futures.
In future, it is not supposed to be a lottery the way that it has been used.
Yep.
So I understand that there are problems of, so we have a agri commodity futures market. So if you just explain a little bit of how a farmer might use it, why he is not using it.
Well, the problem is less at the farmer front. One, the lot size, each individual farmer cannot use it because the minimum lot size is about 10 tons. Okay. So it is the farmer producer organizations who have to come together, have a minimum lot size, and then they can use it. The problem is more at the end of the policymaker. I would say 80% of our parliamentarians feel futures is satta, and सब सटेरे बैठे हुए हैं वहाँ. They don't see it as a price discovery mechanism. So first they need to be educated. How do you discover price? 3 months from today, the farmer should be looking, when he is making a sowing decision, what the price of this crop is likely to be 4 months from today when I'm going to harvest it, and accordingly make a choice. And then buy options. So this is how you hedge yourself, and this is how you discover the price, and your sowing decision should be forward looking. What is he doing? Last year price अच्छा था, इसलिए सारे लगा दो. And then everybody moves in that direction, prices collapse. And when prices collapse next year, nobody moves in that direction. Prices. So the volatility remains high because he is looking in the mirror at the back. He's not looking in the windshield forward. But for that, most of Vajpayee Saab took one of the boldest decisions to start off futures in this country in agriculture. But futures have been killed by the government intervention of different times. Okay? And because jara sa price bada, suspend the futures. When you suspend the futures, then where are the people who are going to put their bets on it? It is the betting and guessing. That is what the price discovery mechanism is all about. So NCDEX today literally is in the ICU because government has literally killed it. So either government should say, okay, we don't want to go this route, futures are finished, ban. But you look at US, you look at China, and how the futures are working. I went to the Dalian market in China, the biggest agri futures market and they are all smallholders there. They were having a program of 1 million farmers to connect to futures. 1 million farmers to be connected to futures. Do we have a program like that? But our policy makers need to be educated on futures. 80% don't understand what is price discovery, how to do it.
Leave futures, they don't understand markets. I mean, it's always there. The problem of this whole socialist mindset is
This is
so
the problem.
deeply
Everything
embedded.
government should do.
Yeah. You mentioned farmer producer organization, and India has a target of setting up about 10,000 of them. I believe 9,000 have been set up. I think tell us a little bit about what is an FPO. Are there any success stories of all the 9,000 which are set up? And is this the direction that Indian agriculture will take?
You know, what is an FPO? Farmer Producer Organization. Farmers are coming together as an organization. We had the biggest success story of milk cooperatives, where a person with 2 liters of milk can also come and pour. Because we are so small, but large in number. Productivity levels are small, our surpluses are small, our holding size is small. 1 hectare is our holding size. So how much surplus you can generate? Everybody is not Punjab. They are Bihar's half a hectare. So if they have some surplus, they can come together to create a scale. And that scale is needed by the buyers. If you have to export, they need millions of tons, rice, for example. So to create a scale, you come together. If you have to do some processing, you have to come together. So farmer producer organization is another version of so-called milk cooperatives it's a reformed version, more into the Companies Act and looking into that. So that's a step in the right direction, but where is the problem? The problem is from the top it comes, okay, we are producing 10,000 farmer. Actually, we need maybe more than a lakh farmer producer organization, and in reality there are more than 35,000 already working in the country. When the order comes from the top, you give some subsidy, they start making those things, and after 3 years they disappear because it hasn't come from the bottom, the demand side. But there are some success stories. Sayadri in Maharashtra, Vilas Shinde has been doing, and I have written an op-ed on that, how they started off with a few farmers. Today they are with 36,000 farmers and exporting to more than 45 countries. And this is a remarkable story, all people coming together. So it's agri-entrepreneurship. Like the milk story, which was a success story of milk cooperatives. So all farmer producers organizations which are being formed today, more than half of them will disappear after 3 years. They are there to get the subsidy. But even if remaining half can produce some tangible results and the demand will come, then I think it's a reasonable success. That's what is going to happen because you have to create scale. What is happening even in our, today's op-ed I written on the garment sector. India has such a widespread garment industry, but they are all dispersed, small ones, with 50 machines, 20 machines, 100 machines. The minimum scale should be 1,000 machines. Because when Walmart is giving you order, they want millions of pieces. And they can't deal with the hundreds of vendors. So they want to talk to one and then ensure that the quality is done. So that's where you create a scale. So either you create a buying house, okay, this will receive the order and then it will distribute amongst those. So either you do this institutional innovation or you scale up. All the world has scaled up. When you scale up, the unit costs go down. But that requires more capital, more entrepreneurship, more risk. And that's the way I think India has to move. In many sectors, we have moved. In agriculture, because the holding size is so small and lease markets are highly restricted. So with 1 hectare of holding size, you can't be producing, thousands of tons of grain or anything else. So that's where I think farmer producer organization, very good concept. But at present, it's a top-down approach. It needs to be bottom-up, depending upon the needs of that region, of that commodity, and then professionalization that is needed. You have to hire those people and create, to feed the urban areas as well as export markets, and it can be done.
So, last question. as we stand here today in June 2025, for the next 10 years, how do you see the story of Indian agriculture playing out? Where do you think we will be 10 years later? Will we take the hard steps, or will we continue with this low value added? Or do you think markets, like you said, the success story of, say, fisheries, shrimp, do you think the demand led market will be able to sort of paper over the lack of policy uh, changes which need to happen very strongly?
It's already doing it. Good thing is, for the last 10 years, our agriculture GDP is growing at 4% per annum. Our population growth has come down to below 1%, 0.9, 0.8. So that population pressure is no more what was in 60s and 70s. So you're going to be having reasonable availability of food. So you're not. But India can have two successive droughts. So you need to have some buffer for that. Income level, because of the small holding size, producing a paddy in a somewhat saline water in Sirsa district of India, Haryana, will give you 2 tons, 2.5 tons. But if you do shrimp there, your income level goes up by 5 times. And shrimp can survive. So we are working on these things. My team is onto it, that how to increase the income level on per hectare basis. Because the holding sizes are not going to go up dramatically, because politically any government will not be able to abolish the Land Ceiling Act, will not be able to announce in any big way land lease market to be freed. Anybody can lease in and lease out. That is politically more sensitive. So politically we still remain in the socialist pattern. Everybody, which has failed. It's a failed model. But we will not adopt fully, openly. Today in China, although all land is owned by the state, but the farmer rights, they can lease it out for 30 years, even to the corporates. Even to the corporates, they are leasing out for 30 years. That's when the investments come in. A 1 hectare of paddy versus grapes, income goes up 4 times. In Andhra Pradesh, when they converted into shrimp farming, in 2 cycles they are earning 15 lakhs per hectare. 15 lakhs compared to paddy, which was giving them less than 1 lakh. So you can increase the income, and something is moving on without the government intervention of MSP or any other major subsidies, some subsidies here and there. So demand patterns will drive, because when you and me started eating more fruits, vegetables, shrimps and all this more nutritious food, then the production basket also has to change. And that is changing over a period of time. But if you adopt more market oriented thing, at present those who are in the literally stuck in the mud is Punjab Haryana belt, where water table, it's an ecological disaster that is taking place. Every year 1.5 feet water table is going down in Punjab and Haryana. And it's all because of free power, paddy domination, open-ended procurement by the government. Now this was a strategy of 1960s we are following today. These people should be converting all this region into a high value export hub, and by air send it to the Gulf. Gulf can't produce anything and we can produce everything. They should be earning 4 times more than paddy. But somebody has to take the initiative. The chief minister of the state will say first thing is free power. What is going on in this country? So you need to have a vision, you need to stick to a new strategy. Ultimately, farmer wants higher incomes, and those incomes have to come from accessing good markets. Gulf, they have all the money in the world, and their things are coming from Europe rather than from India. And Punjab is right there. The entire Amritsar district, Ludhiana, should be converted into export hub for the Gulf. But you have to have a strategy and stick to it for the next 10 years and create a market and do it. I mean, we are studying in Haryana, switching away from paddy to this shrimp farming. They are getting the fish brood stock from Andhra Pradesh, doing it here, and then sending it back to Andhra Pradesh, and still they are making 4 times more profit than paddy.
So basically, what I'm hearing is these are very difficult needles to move on the political spectrum. What I'm hearing is that probably market demand might do what the policy is not being able to do. If policy could add to it, we will get such a huge boost in the country.
The policies that are holding us back is the fertilizer subsidy, free power. They are negative today. They are holding the country's agriculture back, not forward. With the same money, you can increase your agriculture growth and agriculture incomes much faster. But you have to reorient the system, and that's where political economy comes.
Harisham says you've done this because, again,
Wow, wonderful. I'll give you the example.
yes.
And that's the real political punch. During the time Mr. Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, 2001 to 2013-14. Can you imagine what was the growth rate of agriculture in Gujarat? 9.2% per annum. 9.2% per annum. This is higher growth rate than the Punjab's Green Revolution days. Unheard of by any state. That gave Mr. Modi a commanding situation politically. Because when the largest number of people who are engaged in agriculture gain, they would love their. So I can go into the details how he did it. But this is a success story, and that catapulted him to the position of Prime Minister. Second state that has done, Shivraj Singh Chauhan. In Madhya Pradesh, during his tenure as Chief Minister, the agriculture growth rate was 7.2% per annum. And that's why he is brought in as an agriculture minister to turn around. Today he is doing the Padyatra. He is getting all the scientists into the villages. This is a lesson that Chief Minister Modi at that time did under Krishi Mahotsav in Gujarat. 300 Krishi Raths that all the scientists, all the government of agriculture will go to the villages before the Kharif season starts. He is doing, Shivraj Singh Chauhan is doing from 29th of May to 12th of June. Every day he is doing Padyatra and meeting farmers today. This is connecting and taking the ICRIER Director General with him and all the scientists also with him, so that tell the farmers what the new technologies are and what is happening. So if you take an initiative, if you take it that I have to turn it up, Madhya Pradesh is the only state in the country where during his period the contribution of agriculture to overall GDP of the state went up from 22% to 40%. 40%. Nowhere in the world or in any state of India this has happened. So he has done it. So I would bet that today Prime Minister Modi knows what to do. Shivraj Singh Chauhan is the man. If these two people can do two things, reform the fertilizer subsidy and reform the food subsidy, I think they would do great justice to India's agri-food system as a whole.
On that very, very hopeful, positive note, I want to say thank you so much. I have learned so much just talking to you and your years and years of experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure always talking to you.
Thank you for watching. I do these conversations so that you can make up your own mind about the India story and our place in the world. For who else you'd like me to call on this show and any other ideas, please do leave a comment.